And Rev, I want to point to a piece in the New York Times that looks into another angle as to what's going on here, what many see as an identity crisis the Democratic Party is facing about identity politics. Reporter Shane Goldmacher writes this: Democrats are grappling with how to stand up for diversity and defend marginalized groups that have come under assault from the White House without allowing their party to be defined or marginalized by those fights. President Trump has pushed to make DEI a dirty word, racing to unravel diversity programs across the federal government at a remarkable speed. But Democrats are struggling to marshal an effective response. They are debating publicly and privately when to push back, how to push back, and what exactly to push back on. Some are saying that almost no instances of discrimination, especially rank racism, should go unanswered. Others are pressing the party to be more selective and engage only in cultural battles that are winnable. And still others are urging the party to avoid identity politics altogether, even when Republicans seem to be opening themselves up to a fierce counterattack. And so my question to you, Rev, is where do you stand on this? Some say some of these fights are for another day as we're in complete crisis.
I think that what the Democratic Party has to do and the leadership of the party is a stand for something and not try to be all things to all people. And when I read the article, I think that's the debate. Either you're going to say that we are for diversity, and diversity meaning blacks and women and LGBTQ and disabled. Don't let them interpret what it is, that we stand for that. We stand for good policing, but we don't stand for defund the police. You have to have enough nerve and enough backbone to say, define who you are and why you are, rather than be defined by your enemies. And I think that too often the Democrats have allowed their opposition to define them, and they accept the definition. So they are defined as extremists, and you're all about defund the police, and you're all about anarchy, and they become defensive rather than they set the tone. You're dealing with a president that has saluted the worst division in this country, that said it was fine people that were saying Jews will not replace us, that's now talking about, while we are talking about by excluding and deporting people to Mexico, saying that whites are being oppressed in South Africa and they're welcome to be refugees here. Why aren't the Democrats exploiting? Here's a man saying whites are being oppressed, bring them in. We have room for them. We have room for Canada, room for Greenland, but Mexicans and Haitians go out. Democrats need to be dancing all over that. Otherwise, they're going to end up like Patrick Mahomes going home without the win.
I want to read to you, just to get a little deeper on this, what Brianna Wu, a transgender woman and Democratic strategist who ran for Congress in 2018, here's what we're hearing from Brianna, who for years has been pushing for an extreme view of transgender rights. She blamed party leaders for embracing positions like around participation in girls' sports that turn off voters, and said this aided Republican efforts to roll back transgender rights more broadly. Quote, it doesn't help marginalized people to not be able to win elections. The purpose of the Democratic Party is to win elections. We don't need to be babysitting the emotional state of activists.
And I think that clearly we, again, allowed them to define us. I had a mentor that used to say to me, those that define you can confine you. And I think the definition, when they came out with this blitz on transgender, exaggerating the point, there was no pushback saying, no, we're not saying that. We're saying people have rights. So I think that she, in many ways, says what is true. And that is that we cannot appear reckless in where we're fighting in terms of trying to make people be forced into situations that they do not want to be forced in if we don't believe in. I believe in transgender rights, but I do not believe that should be the lead and defined by the opposition.
Well, and that's exactly how Democrats were defined. If you look at the polls that came out afterwards, that's what most Americans thought. Democrats cared the most for, in part because of an ad blitz. But I do want to read you this also from the article, from the Times article, Rev, about the split in the party and what happened even during the election for party leader. Just how far the party is from consensus was apparent during the recent election for the next chairman of the Democratic National Committee, which devolved at times into almost a caricature of left-wing litmus tests on inclusivity. Candidates were asked to pledge to expand transgender representation, add a new Muslim caucus, and affirm that racism and misogyny contributed to Kamala Harris's defeat. Last Saturday, the departing DNC chairman, Jamie Harrison, labored to explain the party's dizzyingly complex gender parity provisions. Our rules specify that when we have a gender non-binary candidate or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 officers must be gender balanced. Republicans gleefully circulated clips of the moment to portray Democrats as hopelessly obtuse. Reverend Al.
I think that what the Democrats have to be careful of is, again, being defined where we are more concerned about checking off boxes, a certain amount of this, certain amount of that, rather than being clear on what it is we stand for and have people of all backgrounds rise up to represent that. And the fallout from that is by just saying we have to have 5% of this, 12% of that, and not what it stands for, and that these people have merit and speak for the people. The fallout is you end up with people that cannot really do what needs to be done to make the party victorious. Sure, we need diversification, but we also need people that are able and qualified to do what needs to be done. And if we make point B point A and A point B, we lose every time. And we cannot let those that can make the most noise decide the strategy. Let them yell all they want. I remember during the George Floyd fight when many of us were leading the marches and rallying nonviolently and working with the family, there were people that said we want to burn down Minneapolis. And we said we're not with them. You have to have the nerve to not only stand up to your opposition, you have to have the nerve to stand up to the noise makers in your own side and say, wait a minute, that's not what we're about.